Hello everyone and welcome to Practical Open Source. My name is Peter, and in this tutorial I'll be showing you how to create your own simple drawing border and title block for your own drawings. Let's get started. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is come up to Options, Current Drawing Preferences, and we are going to make sure that our paper size is set to what we want. In this case, letter is good, and the orientation is landscape. We'll go to Units and change that to inches, and then hit OK. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to create a new layer. We're going to call this paper format. We're going to change the color to magenta and change the width to 0.35. Like that. Now we're going to draw a rectangle to represent our piece of paper. And the first point is going to be the origin, and then the next point will be 11 inches in length and then 8.5 height. And there's our rectangle. That represents our paper. Next, I'm going to select the rectangle and go to Modify, Explode. Now these should be individual lines. I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to call this Drawing Border. I'll leave it as black and white, and I'll change the width to 0.35 again. I will select these three sides. On these three sides, I want a margin of 1/4 inch, so I will go to Modify, Offset. I will change this distance up here to be 0.25, and then I'll click Inside. And I'll hit Control K to deselect everything. And then on the left side here, I want a margin of 1/2 inch. So I'll go back to Offset, come up here, change that to 1/2 inch, and click on this side. Control K to deselect everything. Now let's just trim up these lines. Go to Modify, Trim To. Just select these lines that you want to keep like that. Now I'm going to add some more lines here, so I'll select all of the lines we just drew, go to Modify, Offset again, but this time I want the distance to be 1/8 inch. Then on the inside again, and I'll hit Control K to deselect everything, and now let's trim these lines we just drew. Okay, now I want to select these outside lines, and we're going to make these thicker by going to Modify, Attributes, and then here in the width we will double the width to 0.7 millimeters. Next, what we're going to do is I want to kind of divide the page up into a grid by putting labels along this side and this side. So we will draw some vertical lines first. We want the length to be 0.125 set up here, and then the snap point, we want it to be the start. We're going to want to turn midpoint snapping on and have the number of midpoints set to 2, which will divide this line up into 3 sections. Next, we want to draw a horizontal line on this side, so let's go to Line, Horizontal, Length. Find midpoint, we'll decrease that to 1, snap point, end, we'll snap to that line. Now we want to add some labels to these areas, so we will draw some temporary lines, and maybe I'll switch the paper format to do this, so we'll draw some lines here. So we'll turn on endpoint snapping from this corner to that line, to that corner, that line, there, and from here, here. And this will just help us locate the midpoint. So we're going to go back to the drawing border layer, insert text, and I'm going to start with the label A. And I want this to be 1/16 inch in height. Roman S is fine. We'll put the alignment as middle center and hit OK. Now we want midpoint snapping on. Off, and we want midpoints, make sure that's set to 1, and then we can just snap to the middle of that line and put our label in there. And now I want want the next label to be B, and then C. And now on this side, I want this to be labeled 1. The rows will be labeled 1 here, with numbers, not letters. Find that midpoint. Oh, there it is. And then the next one is 2. There we go. Now we can get rid of these temporary lines. That, zoom out, and now we have labels on our columns and rows. Now the last thing I'm going to add is a rectangle on this side of the border. So we'll go to line, rectangle, click anywhere, and I'm going to give it a width of 1/16 of an inch and give it 6 inches in height. I'll select it, go to modify, move, select this midpoint and snap it to that midpoint. I'm going to say delete the original, and that's going to help us when we're trying to print our drawing. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to draw the title block next. So let's create a new layer. We'll call this, title block. And we will change the color to blue. We'll change the width to 0.35 and hit OK. Now we're going to draw a grid along the bottom edge of the drawing border. Now if I measure the length of the inside of our border, it should be 10 inches. So if we come down here and we draw a rectangle, snap it to that corner, and then we will say the next point will be, we'll give it a width of 1/4 of an inch and a height of 3/8. Zoom in here, I'll select the rectangle, go to modify, explode. I will select these 3 lines and go to modify, move copy. Like that corner, and we're going to do multiple copies. And since it's 1/4 of an inch in width and the length of this is 10 inches, 40 items will fit in this drawing border, but we already have one, so this only has to be 39. We'll hit OK. And if we zoom out, we'll see that our grid spans the width of the inside of our drawing border. Next, let's start filling in some fields here. I'll start in the bottom left corner. I'll go up to the text, and we will say the first field will be drawn by. And we will leave the height at 1/16 of an inch, but we'll change the alignment to bottom left. Hit OK. And now I want to turn grid snapping on and zoom in until we get a fine grid, and then just stick that there. Now you could have your initials in here, but let's give it 3 fields like that. The next field, let's call that date. Hit OK, zoom in, put that there. Now it can be difficult to know how many fields you're going to need, so let's add the date format. Year, month, day. But we will double the height to 1/8 of an inch. And we'll change the alignment to middle center. Okay. Now we just need to fill up the number of rows we need. Zoom in here. There. So we can get rid of these lines here. Next, let's come over to the right corner. And let's add some more labels here. We'll call this, we'll put the scale in this side. We'll decrease the height back to 1/16 of an inch and bottom left alignment. Zoom in, let's give it 3 fields here. Next, let's do sheet. 3 fields again. And then let's put in the revision. Let's just give this one field. And the last thing I'll put in here is the drawing title, and I'll just use the rest of the fields for the drawing title. Drawing title, but we'll instead use 3/16 of an inch, middle center alignment. Just stick that in the middle. There is our simple title block, and we can just change the attributes back to, change the color back to black. And there is our title block. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to insert our drawing border and title block into an actual drawing. So let's save this file as drawing template letter landscape. All right, now let's open up a drawing to insert our border into. We will go to File, Import, Block, and we will pick our file. Hit OK, and now let's insert it at the origin. Now you can see it's too small. So what I want to do is scale this up. So let's select it, and it brought it in as a block, so it's one entity. So we can just select anywhere on it and go to Scale. We're going to pick the origin. We're going to delete the original, and we're going to scale it up by 10. And now that fits our drawing. Now, if we check what it looks like by going to Print Preview, well, first let's go to Options and make sure our drawing is set to the same size. Letter, landscape, it is. Okay. Let's go to Print Preview. And we see that it's not quite fitting right on the page. We want 1/4 of an inch along these 3 sides, and then 1/2 an inch on this side. Well, the first problem I see is that our paper format layer is showing. So what we do is we come over to this icon here and click on it to deselect the printer icon, so now this layer won't get printed. So let's fix the scale. Let's go back to our drawing. And what we want to do, let's add a new layer, and we'll call this Dimensions. Change it to red. And the width to 0.35. So let's measure this small rectangle we put on the outside of our border here by going to Dimension, Vertical, turn on Endpoint Snapping, snap the end of it there and the end of it there. We see that it is 60 inches in length. So if we go back to Print Preview, uncheck Fixed, and then here we'll type in our scale by typing in 6. That's the original height of our rectangle, and it is now 60. Hit Enter. We'll apply the scale and then check the fixed box to keep it that way, and then we'll center the drawing. As you can see, our margins are proper. Got 1/4 of an inch on this side and 1/2 an inch on this side. And it's scaled properly. So if we go back to our drawing, we can get rid of this dimension. And if we go back to Print Preview, we'll see that LibreCAD has fixed our scale and minimized it, and our scale is 1:10. Additionally, if you're printing out at a scale of 1:1, let's say for example you're printing out templates for cutting or drilling or lettering, you can use this side rectangle to verify the scale of your drawing. So you can simply take a ruler and measure and make sure that this side rectangle is 6 inches in length, or whatever length you set it to. And that's how you can create your own drawing border and title block using LibreCAD. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down in the comment section down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.